This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scene at the end of each episode, or join us for our monthly movie club Zoom call where we discuss a film together, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
Man, in real life, Richard, Ready to Record is very short and nowhere near as engaging as we make it out to be in our web series, because you joined the call about 25 seconds ago and all we talked about was my washing, my laundry.
And I can vouch for the fact that it was not very interesting.
It would not make a very good episode of Ready to Record, which has actually finished up its season for the year, maybe forever. Who knows?
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who watched our little web series. It's 10 episodes, which I'm very proud of, that we made it to 10 episodes. I usually give up on these things after 6 or 8 episodes. But
Yeah, but we committed to a full 10. I think because we halved the workload.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to write all of those, I would have fucking not done them. And if you had to edit them, you probably just been grumpy.
Yeah. Before we get into the show today, Richard, I do want to talk about our new Patreon tier, which is a very exciting thing. We have a new tier on Patreon. It's a $15 a month tier, and it's called Cult Classics, or the Cult Classic tier.
Yeah, spelt with a K.
No, why would it be spelt with a K? What it is that we have started a Cult Popture movie club. So, if you join the $15 Cult Classic tier, what it means is that once a month, you will be given access to a Zoom call where you will contribute to a live podcast with us and everyone else who has contributed to the Zoom call. I think there are currently 7 members of the Cult Classic tier, meaning already we're looking at a 9-person podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I think it'll be funny.
Yeah, I think there's going to be more structure than just like everyone start talking now.
Of course, and we will. It will. I anticipate a couple of growing pains, but if you want to get in on that, the first, I'm not going to say what the movie is because that's privileged information. But if you want to get in on the first Zoom call, it will be happening on October 10th New Zealand time, which is October 11th, almost everywhere else.
October 9th.
Oh, is it?
Or is it October 11th New Zealand time, October 10th?
Yes, you're right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
It's Sunday for us, Saturday for a lot of the world.
Yeah. So, and after we record it, we'll be chucking it up on the Cult Popture podcast YouTube channel. So it's not going to be an exclusive podcast that only patrons hear, but if you pay $15, you get to be on a podcast with us, which is something we get asked about a lot. And this is a way to do it. It's behind a paywall. So, I'm excited. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, we can, while we're not, I guess, going to announce what the movie is here, I can narrow it down slightly and say that despite my best efforts, the film is not Jack and Jill.
No, we kind of want it. Well, how it'll work is Richard will choose the first month, I'll choose the second month, etc., etc. And I was under the impression that it would be maybe not necessarily like classics in the traditional sense, but exclusively universally liked movies.
Yeah, and ones that bear discussion. We could do like you and I could create like a list and do a random thing.
Oh.
Because that could be fun at the end of the call that, like, you know, we randomly select it and then do the segment that we've apparently introduced to this podcast where part of Franchise Roulette is making the other person guess what it is, but having 8 other people guess. And we just get together, collate a list of 50 to 100 films that
for the next 5 years of the Cult Classic tier on the Patreon. So go check that out. We're gonna have to start adding a bit more to the preamble at the start of each podcast episode so that people know what exactly they are missing out on. So there
or
you
getting.
Go. Yeah. Also, if you are a patron, there is now a Patreon lounge on the Discord where only patrons are admitted entry to. And that's almost every one of our regular Discord chatters. But if the one thing keeping you from joining the Discord was they don't have a Patreon lounge, now we do! Yay!
And your name will be yellow as well.
Yes.
Or it's the closest we could approximate to gold. Anyway,
It'll be
enough
coloured
of this
yellow.
bloody admin. The fans aren't here to hear that. What they're here to hear is our discussion on the Herbie, aka the Love Bug franchise. So, welcome along to Film Franchise Fortnights. This is a podcast where every 2 weeks, Alexander Jones,
hello,
and
call
myself, Richard Martin, RM.
Call him RM. Doesn't flow anywhere near as well as AJ.
We watch every film in a franchise and discuss that.
You were offended by me saying RM doesn't flow as well as AJ.
And you know what? It broke my flow. And so you made it so that not only the letters RM next to each other, but the person who shall hereforth be known as RM didn't flow as well.
Yeah, no. I get it. I said it and I was like, oh, I've hurt his feelings. All right.
Do you want to finish explaining anything I left out of the podcast description?
No, I think that's it. We watch a different franchise every 2 weeks, and this week we watched the Herbie, the Love Bug, whatever. Yeah. I think by the process of picking what most of them are called, it's the Herbie franchise. Yeah. Though 2 of them are called the Love Bug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's more films called The Love Bug than anything else in this franchise. But yeah, I would say, Herbie. Should we see if Wikipedia has, a Herbie franchise page?
And it has, another third, title for it.
Yeah.
The Wacky Car franchise!
And I don't think it has a franchise page, which is uncommon for a franchise that has it's a Disney franchise and it's reasonably popular. So the first film was The Love Bug that came out in 1969. You'll see it often places will refer to it as a 1968 film. It was released in limited theaters on Christmas and then got a wide release in May of 1969. It was directed by Robert Stevenson. And AJ, what is that about?
Okay, so it is about a sort of a ruffian underdog race car driver, named Jim Douglas. And he can't win any races, and then one day he stumbles across a little V-dub. A Beetle? They're Beetles, right?
Volkswagen
I always mix up V-dubs and Minis, and I cannot tell the difference between either car.
That is insane.
Yeah, and this V-dub is like a sentient car. It can't talk, but it can do almost everything else.
Yeah.
And it's really fast, and its name is Herbie. It's named Herbie by Jim Douglas's assistant, his mechanic. And the conflict is that Mr. Banks from Mary Poppins is a car salesman who inadvertently sold them the car because he thought it was real bad, no, he didn't sell them it, didn't he? He told them to take it out of the showroom, and then Herbie followed Jim Douglas home because he saw something in him.
Yeah.
And then
he did sell them,
yeah. And then it turns out he's a real good racing car, and Jim Douglas starts racing around, and Herbie and Mr. Banks gets very frustrated and tries to win Herbie back. He tries to sabotage it. This is the formula to which all Herbie movies end up being. It was... That's it. Am I missing anything crucial?
No,
there's a love interest.
It's worth mentioning, it ends with a big race, a 2-day kind of race, which is essentially just 2 laps of this big thing where it's there and back again kind of thing. And so it features Jim Douglas and Herbie with his love interest and his assistant, played by Buddy Hackett, who is the voice of the seagull in The Little Mermaid. They and they go through all these troubles because Mr. Banks from Mary Poppins keeps getting out and, painting signs so they go the wrong way and all this stuff. But the film ends with Herbie, who's been beaten to death within an inch of his life over the course of this race, is splits into two straight down the middle, so that the driver and the passenger seat are separated from the two back seats, and then somehow Buddy Hackett, sitting in the back seat, manages to overtake the front of the car and the villain's car, so that Herbie wins, because it's like, so the back of the car crosses the finish line, and then the villain's car crosses the finish line, and then the front of Herbie crosses the finish line, and this counts as a win for Herbie.
He comes first and third.
Yeah.
Is how they say it in the film. And so it's essentially turns into somewhat of like a road runner, Wile E. Coyote kind of thing for a bit towards the end of most of these films, actually. But yeah.
What'd you think of the film?
I mean, look, I don't know how excited I would be if someone was like, hey, have you seen The Love Bug? I'm going to put it on, like, now that I've seen it. But we have watched a few pre-1970s movies on this podcast, and by and large, I am far too warped by the age of access that we live in as millennials to pay attention to them. Like, even if they're classics, most of the time I'll find them pretty boring. And I don't want to say The Love Bug is exciting, but it's fine. It was an enjoyable time. I enjoyed the characters. Yeah. I thought it didn't overstay its welcome. It's a very easy passive watch. I would say that most of the Herbie movies feel like you go to your grandparents' house when you're 10 years old and they only have one VHS and it's one of the Herbie movies. And so you've seen it 100 times, but it's a perfectly adequate watch and it's not especially boring or, bad in any way.
Yeah. I would go a little bit further than that. I think it's a fantastic movie.
Oh.
I thought, like, this is like, it's one of those movies that, like, it's as good as it can be, and I would say it's like a 4 out of 5 star movie. Like, for a 1969 family Disney comedy, it's as good as it can be. It's everything you would want from it. And yeah, I had a great time watching this, and I was shocked at how fun I found this. Like, the tone is like works really well. The characters I like came to really like, and so we do see Jim Douglas later on, and I was like, fuck yeah, like I got excited when he came back. And yeah, and like Herbie, obviously you fall in love with that little car. But yeah, I was genuinely very surprised at how much I enjoyed this film.
I think it's maybe because all those, like, when you go on Disney Plus and there's like the posters for these old Disney movies, you see them and you go, oh, that looks fucking boring as hell. Man, you look at the posters for like all these movies and they all kind of had that same like very grainy, shocked expression kind of thing, and it's like, this looks like something that was probably pretty popular in the 60s, but wouldn't be now. But no, I do agree that I did like it more than I thought I would.
Yeah, because when last week when we rolled this franchise, you were like, oh, dude, like a fucking 60s Disney movie. We're going to find this so boring. And I went into it expecting to like suffer through it kind of thing. And for the first part of it, I was kind of like, whatever. But then, like, by the time it turned into like the third act was kind of just like a racing movie essentially. I ended up, and it's not like I'm like, I love racing movies, so it really appealed to me. I got real into it, and like the Looney Tunes kind of angle of it. I really, really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought I would.
And all these movies like delightfully have really absurd moments, almost absurd by today's standards, like outside of they transcend the time era they came out. And like at one point Jim Douglas gets real angry that everybody's crediting Herbie for being the fast car and not him for being a good driver. And Herbie goes to jump off a bridge. He's so upset that he goes to jump off a bridge, and it's like, this is insane.
Yeah, and it's also like, what the fuck? Like, no, Herbie, don't jump. Like,
it's very funny, and like, there's a part where Mr. Banks from Mary Poppins tries to sabotage Herbie by going to the garage when only Herbie and Buddy Hackett are there, and Buddy Hackett gets completely wasted off Irish coffee, and then Mr. Banks like pours Irish coffee into Herbie's like carburetor or something. And it's like this whole thing, it's like, what is this? This is insane. This is an insane story.
Yeah. But it is one of those movies that it sneaks up on you. Like,
yeah.
I was watching it and being like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna check this on. It was like a morning before work or something like that, and then I was like, okay.
Yeah. So what is it?
What do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
These things are hard to tell because I feel like old movies have a bias to make them higher. So I'm gonna say this is like 88% on Rotten Tomatoes.
76%.
76%. Oh yeah, that makes sense.
And 66 audience.
Oh no.
So this was actually the last live-action Disney film produced with Walt's development.
Interesting.
Because he died 2 years before it came out, but it obviously was in development before
I thought Walt Disney died much later. I'm confusing him with Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss died in 1990. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Walt Disney died in 1966, I believe.
That's so early. He had no idea. He hadn't even heard of the Avengers. That's my benchmark.
I mean, he might have.
Yeah, but I don't know. He had no idea what his empire would become, or maybe he did.
I feel like he did. Like I mentioned, it's a Volkswagen Beetle. Volkswagen actually didn't give permission to Disney to use their name or their logo, so it's probably one of the most recognizable car designs of all time. The Volkswagen Beetle, and then they did the redesign in the 2000s, which is also which actually features in Herbie Fully Loaded later on. But again, it's a very recognizable shape. So he doesn't have like the hood ornament logo, and no one says Volkswagen, but they talk about him being like a bug.
Well, it's in the title.
Yeah, and also I think the term Beetle wasn't trademarked at the time by Volkswagen.
Right.
So they call him a Beetle because it was just like a colloquial name, but then after that, Volkswagen actually like trademarked that term. But then the sequels... Is that
why?
Yeah?
Is that why the sequels are called Herbie and not Bug?
Maybe. But actually the sequels do use the branding and reference Volkswagen because sales of the Beetle were down. And so Volkswagen's like, please, oh my god.
that I feel like something like that very rarely happens. Where it seems like it's very cordial, you know, like someone using someone else's brand, and then like usually you hear these things and they're big, these controversial scandals, but this sounds like it was very kind of like, we'll help you if you help us kind of thing.
Yeah. And so got a new segment for you. We do dumb IMDb trivia a lot.
Yeah.
I've got a piece of dumb Wikipedia trivia.
I don't like this at all.
This is actually
the realms of my comfort zone.
Okay, so this is actually why it talks about the development of the film a little bit and why it was a Volkswagen Beetle. So before film production began, the titular car was not specified as a Volkswagen Beetle, and Disney set up a casting call for a dozen cars to audition. In the lineup, there are a few Toyotas, a TVR, a handful of Volvos, an MG, and a pearl white Volkswagen Beetle. The Volkswagen Beetle was chosen as it was the only one that elicited the crew to reach out and pet it, citation needed.
That doesn't sound real.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound real, but reading actually some smart IMDb trivia, I understood it a little bit more because they said there's these 12 cars in the parking lot. Go see what you think just when you walk past. And when people walk past the other cars, you know, you do you kick the tires and you kind of tap the hood and do that kind of thing. But then with the Beetle, you would just like place your hand on the bonnet kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it was more like a loving kind of thing where it was like, oh, yeah, is this one up to scratch? And it was like, but with the Beetle, it was like, oh, this is a nice car.
That's so strange that there was ever a chance that Herbie was not going to be a Beetle.
Yeah.
Because obviously a Beetle is the most expressive car. Imagine if it was a Toyota, you wouldn't give a shit.
Or a DeLorean.
But the DeLorean's not a living creature. It's not supposed to be, that sort of thing.
Fun fact, I did a pub quiz years ago. It was a fundraiser thing. And like the tie-breaking question at the end was like a Family Feud type thing, which was like, what's the most popular, like name a movie car. And I put a DeLorean. And then people were like, oh, what about Herbie? And I was like, no, like, it's obviously DeLorean. And then Herbie was number 1, Batmobile was number 2, and then there was a bunch of other ones, and DeLorean wasn't even on the list. And I was like, I would rather lose with DeLorean than win with Herbie.
How would you feel now?
Oh, I'd love to win with Herbie now.
There you go.
But it is actually based on a book called Car Boy Girl.
What the fuck?
Which you'll be pleased to know was actually the working title of the film.
Wow, Car Boy Girl.
We talk about titles a lot on this podcast. We could do it now. We normally do it after we've talked about all of them. But I can throw some alternate titles at you.
Okay.
Car Boy Girl, The Magic Volksy, The Runaway Wagon. Wagon spelled Wagen, as in the end of Volkswagen. Wagon.
The runaway fucking.
Beetle Bomb, Wonder Beetle, Bug Boom, and Thunderbug.
I get it. I get it.
Because you think The Love Bug's a bad title, but oh boy. Thunderbug could work, I think.
I don't think The Love Bug's a bad title. I'm just obviously, if you know anything about this podcast, you'll know I'll be annoyed that the first one's not called Herbie and almost all the other ones are.
Yeah.
There's no movie in this franchise just called Herbie.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's one of those things that you think about and you go, huh.
Yeah. Because the fact that Herbie Fully Loaded is like, Herbie's the title, Fully Loaded is the subtitle, but there's nothing that just has the title. Anyway, well, we talk about taglines sometimes on this podcast. And the Love Bug this franchise has very kind of like pulpy, fun taglines. So the one for this one was, "It's a lovin' for Herbie, ... the amazing little car who shifts for himself."
We all need to shift for ourselves sometimes, I think.
There's
a thing or two we can all learn from Herbie.
Another like fun piece of trivia, kind of, that I noticed while watching it, I messaged it to you, is that, so there's a character called Mr. Wu who's like interested in buying Herbie, or striking up some kind of deal. And after the first lap of the final race, which doesn't go very well for them, and they're all kind of beaten down a little bit, and they're contemplating pulling out of the race, Mr. Wu comes by and says, "Oh, little bird's nest soup never hurt." And gives them all bird's nest soup, which I guess proves the guy's loaded, because bird's nest soup is like $5,000 New Zealand a bowl, because it's like the edible bird's nest you make it out of is like $10,000 for a kilo.
Wow.
Which is insane.
I don't think I'll ever be rich enough that I could drop $5,000 on something I don't even know I'll enjoy. I feel like it's
a bird's nest that's essentially cemented with bird saliva, and that they make a soup out of it. It sounds horrible.
Yeah, I think there's a glass ceiling on how good any food can taste.
Right. Yeah.
And that glass ceiling for me taps out at maybe like $300.
Maybe
for
like
a
taps out like
thing.
McDonald's. What's something that you would pay $300 for?
Maybe like a steak or something that I'm never gonna have a chance to get again.
Yeah, interesting, because I see you as the kind of person that would spend that money on a steak or something like that and be like, oh, it was fine. Like, or obviously it's going to be like quite a small serving and you'll be like, oh, I'm just still hungry. I can't imagine you ever being satisfied spending that much money on food.
You're right. I would be that satisfied spending that much money on like food in the sense of like my soda can collection.
Yeah,
like
true.
if I could buy like a bulk load of obscure flavors of Skittles, I could see myself at some point when I'm rich enough, which I'm not at the moment, spending dropping a big load of money on some weird flavors of things. I could see myself doing
So
that.
this is sometime in the future when you're fully loaded.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. What's the most you've spent on like food, a meal?
Does Uber Eats count?
How much have you spent?
I've spent quite a lot on Uber Eats, but the most has always been when it's buying for someone else as well. So like individual meal for myself. Probably like I went to Australia a couple years ago and we went to like this famous steak and ribs place, and I bought both steak and ribs.
Nice.
And then foolishly ate the potatoes first and wasn't hungry enough for the steak or the ribs.
That is very foolish.
It's very
how much
foolish.
Was that?
I actually can't remember. It was under $100. I don't think I've ever spent over $100 on food.
Wow, so you've never done like fine dining?
Nah, I would love to though. It's just no one wants to go with me.
We should go next time. Well, you will use the Patreon money.
Okay, we'll go fine dining. We'll go for a Herbie dinner.
Fine dining is one of those things that like yeah, obviously you have to expect not a lot of food.
Right.
But oh my god, it's fucking amazing.
Nice.
And
actually,
it's one of those things that you do it and you're like, oh yeah, this is worth it.
I've probably done fine dining at weddings, but I haven't really paid for it.
Right, yeah.
You know, like at Jeremy's wedding, Jeremy from the Cult Popture podcast.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't invited, but go on.
I went to his wedding, and he the food there was really good. And it's funny because most of the weddings I'd been to have been like sort of 20 to 23-year-old Christians getting married too early so they can have sex, because I come from a pretty heavily churched background.
Yeah.
And Jeremy got married, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, in his early 30s. And going to an early 30s person wedding, it was like, everyone should get married at this age.
Right.
This is when you can afford the best night of the year for everyone going.
Right.
You know? Yeah. So that's probably the closest I've had to fine dining was Jeremy's wedding.
Nice. Yeah, I've done it a couple of times. It's exciting. There's a couple of nice places in Christchurch we could go next time.
Let's do it, bro.
Yeah. Anyway, also, probably most expensive single meal I've had was Kobe beef in Kobe, Japan.
Ooh, very nice.
So Kobe is like a very specific cut of Wagyu beef, which is like the best type of beef. But it's also like one of those things that's like, because they like, it's like almost like teppanyaki where they like do it in front of you, and it's like you're paying a little bit for the experience as well.
Yeah.
Paying for the story, and I'm getting my fucking money's worth by going on this tangent on the Love Bug episode.
I heard a piece of advice once that was like, it is better to spend money on experiences than possessions. And I actually agree with that. But food is almost the midway point between possession and experience.
Yeah.
So I'd probably be more willing to spend drop a bunch of money on food than I would be on like a PlayStation 5.
Well, but a PlayStation 5 is an experience that you own.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, like a model, right? Like a model of a pop culture figure I like. I don't intentionally buy that shit. I've kind of accrued some of it over the years, but I never go to like EB Games and I'm like, I'm gonna buy this model.
Well, didn't you do that for The Last of Us 2?
I did, but that was more out of like wanting the full I don't know. To be honest, I was a little bit disappointed with The Last of Us 2 collection because I knew it came with a statue, and I didn't really look at what it came with. I was like, I like this IP enough that I'm willing to drop a big bunch of money on it.
It was like over $200, right?
Yeah, to have like the deluxe package of whatever that was. But I was expecting it would come with like a poster and maybe a t-shirt, and it came with this big fuck off model, which is where most of the money I think was spent on, and a bunch of like key rings and badges and stuff that are sitting in a drawer because I don't have anything to do with a bunch of
You don't
badges.
have any keys?
Oh no, actually I don't know why I said key ring. It does as a bracelet, not a key ring.
Right. And you have any wrists?
I don't have a single wrist.
Well, that was a fun little tangent. Maybe we'll try a couple more of those. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts on the Love Bug?
I don't think I do. It's the one thing I'll say is that I watched it maybe a week ago now, and when you were like, "You ready to record?" I was like, "Oh shit, I don't remember what the movies are about." So that would be the only
Yeah,
note I would
I
say is they're
definitely
hard to
would
remember.
recommend this film to people, and I've been talking about it to people this way. I had a funny discussion where someone was like, I mentioned that I was watching the Herbie films, and they were like, "Oh, how many are there?" I was like, 6, and they're like, "Oh, I've only seen the first one." And I was like, "It's actually like really good, eh?" And they're like, "Yeah, like Lindsay Lohan." I'm like, "No, it's the sixth one."
Yeah, that
um,
is the last one.
yeah. Also, fun fact: Dean Jones, who's the main character, who plays the main character in this, Jim Douglas, he was the bad guy in Beethoven.
Oh shit,
Yeah, do you remember what he looked like?
no.
I'll send you a picture because it was one of those things that I remember watching Dean Jones in Beethoven and thinking, where do I know this guy from?
It turned out
And
it was the Love Bug.
it was that I would watch Herbie years later and recognize him there. But he has a very distinctive look, and it stuck with me. If you haven't seen Beethoven recently, give it a quick
Which I
Google.
haven't. I actually haven't seen Beethoven recently.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at this guy. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Very distinctive.
Yeah, he's got big he's got glasses that give him like big bug eyes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Love bug eyes.
Maybe that's why they cast him. Okay, so the next film in the franchise, as you mentioned, drops the Love Bug title and is starts the new kind of titling scheme, which is Herbie Rides Again. Came out 5 years later, again directed by Robert Stevenson. What's this one about?
So this starts my favorite tradition of Herbie sequels, which is you start one and you go, is this a I've never met Herbie movie, or is it a Herbie has been around for a wee while movie? Because depending on who the collection of main characters is in each film, they'll either already have Herbie or just discover Herbie and have to go through the rigmarole of understanding there's a sentient car and yada yada yada. So this one is about like a evil businessman, like a real estate developer who wants to bulldoze over like an old lady's mansion and build whatever there, and his nephew is sent to go and like give them the notice that they have to get out. And the house where this old lady lives, she also lives with her like granddaughter and Herbie. The old lady already knows, and the daughter actually already know what the deal is with Herbie, and which is something I want to talk about actually. So dog ear that.
Okay. Dog
and
ear thing. AJ said.
Nice. And so it's this sort of like young businessman trying to do something to impress his evil capitalist grandfather or uncle, learning that Herbie is this wonderful car, and he falls in love with the daughter of the old lady, and he falls in love with Herbie, and they all become friends and have to. Is there a race in this one?
It's not predominantly about racing, but I believe there is some kind of racing element to the film. But
Right.
it's about construction more than anything.
Yeah, and they sort of punk the real estate developer a bunch of times, and then he's like, all right, you win, but he secretly was lying, and then he fights them again, and then he loses again. And it's just a happy ever after. The main thing I remember from this film is that, again, delightfully absurd moments is one of the villains has a nightmare about Herbie, and we put this on our Instagram. There's like Herbie chasing him in his nightmare, but there's 100 Herbies and they all have big sharp werewolf teeth. And then there's like ones with like a Native American headdress on, like marching towards him, and then there's one where he's King Kong on the Empire State Building, and all the planes are Herbies flying around him. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, because when did this come out?
1974.
1974. It's like, this is real creative. You know, like for a time when things they could be a little more traditional, this is like the kind of shit I would want to see in a modern day Herbie movie. And I thought it was very fun. It was almost reminiscent of the pink elephant scene from Dumbo. So that was the main thing I remember about a movie which I otherwise don't really remember too much else about. What have you got?
Okay. I have some potentially alarming news.
Oh my god.
Okay, so you mentioned the bad guy in this film, the one that has a nightmare. There's a character named Alonzo Hawke. He's
Mhm.
played by Keenan Wynn, who's actually the son of Ed Wynn, who was the Mad Hatter,
All right.
and like kind of famous for that character. Alonzo Hawke does not originate from this film.
Oh no.
Alonzo Hawke is actually the villain in The Absent-Minded Professor and its sequel, Son of Flubber. The Absent-Minded Professor was remade into Flubber with Robin Williams, making this actually a crossover with the Absent-Minded Professor series.
This is bananas. This news goes bananas, dude. Which is the name of the following Herbie movie. I don't think I explained that.
I will say though, if we require an out in The Absent-Minded Professor, Alonzo P. Hawke is played by Keenan Wynn and is the exact same character. However, in this, he's Alonzo A. Hawke.
Oh, it's completely different. We don't have to cover the absent-minded professor / Flubber. This is fine. Why did Robin Williams' Flubber not spawn more sequels? It feels like exactly the kind of movie that would do that. If Flubber was the first movie I ever saw in cinemas.
Really?
Yep.
You didn't go to the cinema until you were like, how old?
4?
When did Flubber come out?
What the fuck? You didn't go when you were 3, bro?
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, it was 97. In my mind, it's like a 2003 film.
No. I'd been to 1,000 movies by 2003.
You've barely seen 1,000 movies.
All right. I don't really care if I have or not. It's more the quality of the movies I have seen, such as Herbie Rides Again and Flubber, that I care about.
Which is actually a crossover with that franchise.
Wow.
So I mean, in a perfect world, maybe we should be covering The Absent-Minded Professor in 2 weeks' time.
Well, I mean, the way this podcast goes is we mention a franchise offhandedly and it becomes the next one we roll through serendipity. So we will probably roll Flubber next, I think.
Yeah.
I'm
Did
calling
you realize
it now.
that Flubber was a franchise until now?
I'd heard of The Absent-Minded Professor. I don't know
Okay.
if I knew there was a sequel to The Absent-Minded Professor.
Okay. Anywho, so what else? What did you think of the film?
Again, I rated, I think, almost all of these like 3 stars, which is my way of saying like, yep, nothing
Yeah.
really bad to say about it. It's because a movie has to be a little bit better than average for me to be like, sure, it's fine. If a movie is average, I'm like, a movie's average.
I would give The Love Bug 4 stars. I'd give probably the rest of them 3 or 2.5 stars.
Right.
I agree with Gene Siskel of Even and Siskel. Called it a surprisingly tolerable sequel, which I think is like the perfect explanation.
Oh, it's a surprisingly tolerable franchise,
yeah,
Richard.
100%. Yeah. What do you think this one has on Rotten Tomatoes?
70,
Up a bit.
72,
Up a bit.
73,
Up a bit.
77,
Up a bit.
89,
Down a bit.
88,
Down a bit.
79,
Up a bit.
80.
Yep. It's only from
I
5
got
reviews,
it!
so it just means that like 4 out of those 5 reviews were positive. 53% with audiences. Yeah, I thought it was fun. It is weird to kind of like not revolve it around a race. Because while he is riding again, and a lot of it is like, there's like a grandma who kind of just like gets behind the wheel of Herbie, and they're like, no, stop. Like a lot of the film is that. It is a surprisingly tolerable sequel, and it was
Absolutely.
like, after watching the first one and then watching this one, I was like, fuck, is this gonna be like one of the best franchises?
Well, it's certainly
Consistent.
I don't think there's a bad movie in the 6, which is very rare.
Yeah, I would almost agree with you. Not that I
No.
don't agree with you. It's like I do agree with you. I think is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, it's a perfectly serviceable movie, and the franchise itself is a good time. Surprisingly. I guess. The tagline for this film. There's 2.
Mhm.
One is "The Love Bug's back doing his thing,"
Oh,
And the other one is the love bug's back doing in a new hilarious adventure.
doing in a new hilarious adventure. The love bug's back doing his thing, not racing.
Yeah, his thing, being sentient.
Yeah.
Okay. Next film, 3 years later, same year as Star Wars. It was Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo. It was directed by Vincent McKeevity.
Mm-hmm.
And what's this one about? Also, mentioning Star Wars. It obviously was beaten at the box office by Star Wars. The original Love Bug was the second highest grossing film of 1969, behind Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Although some places report it was the highest grossing, or it might have just been like it was the most profitable or something like that. But
Right. Okay. So this is Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo.
yes.
And this one sees Jim Douglas return to the driver of Herbie. He was never mentioned in Herbie Rides Again, but now he's back. And instead
Doing his
of
thing.
racing. And instead of Buddy Hackett, it's what's the guy's name?
Don Knotts.
Don Knotts. Don Knotts. What? That's my Don Knotts impression. You should look up the poster for this movie. I was going to post it on Instagram, but I thought it would muddy the water of all the other Herbie posts.
Barney Fife from the Andy Griffith Show.
There you go.
This is most famous one.
And they go to Monte Carlo, which is in France, where there is a race going on. And they are going to be racing Herbie in this race, and there's a lady racer who Jim Douglas has got the sweet eye for, and she happens to have a car that is also sentient that Herbie has the sweet headlight for. And
Yeah,
while
Herbie's
all
real
this is
horny in
happening,
these movies, isn't he?
this movie should be called Herbie
Horny
gets
Goes to
horny on
Monte
Main. Herbie horny on Main. Herbie : horny on Main. While all this is happening, though, a French museum, which has been showcasing this very rare diamond, is stolen by a couple of bandits who kind of screw up the theft and set off all the alarms, and they run out into the crowd of the Monte Carlo gathering. And so to hide the gem while they're walking through this big crowd of people, they sort of put it in Herbie's petrol what's it called? They open his
gas tank.
his gas tank. Yeah, and put it in there, and then Herbie drives away before they can get it back again. And so the movie is a cross between them training for this race and these villains trying to get Herbie so that they can get the jewel out of his gas tank, which no one else knows is there. All the while Herbie is misbehaving something awful because he is infatuated with this other car. And the driver of that car does not believe that cars can be sentient, which is an element seldom brought up to the degree it's brought up in this movie.
Tell me where in the rule books it says a car can't be sentient.
That's a good point. So it ends with the big race and the villains trying to coax Herbie off track so they can get the diamond. And it all ends, and it turns out the police detective is in on it, and he's actually evil as well. And they win the race, they save the day, they defeat the villains, and all the
Herbie
humans
gets to
and
fuck the hotline.
yeah, presumably
Piece of car ass. A couple of corrections. Monte Carlo's in Monaco.
The first scene is in Paris though.
The race is the fictional Trans-France race, which goes from Paris to Monte Carlo.
Okay.
And I believe it's a quartz, not a diamond.
I don't know the difference.
They mention a quartz. I remember them talking about a quartz. You mentioned them popping it in the gas tank. Here's a fun piece of dumb IMDb trivia to go with that. The gas cap used in the film was fake. As every Herbie fan knows, Herbie's gas tank is under the hood, as revealed plenty of times in the original movie. The fake gas tank was added so that the gem thieves could easily stash the diamond, maybe it is a diamond, inside Herbie without looking conspicuous. The tank was removed in the remaining sequence.
I reckon that piece of...
As every Herbie fan knows.
I reckon that piece of IMDb trivia is so dumb you have no reason to believe it's actually a diamond over a quartz now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you want to hear... what did you think of the film? And then
I think this is maybe the best or second best one. I enjoyed this one.
Yeah,
I think
cool.
maybe it's because of Jim Douglas. I think maybe because maybe I was just more focused watching this one than the other ones. But
Yeah, it's also
it's
like
good.
this is a classic franchise for like franchise sequel tropes.
Yes.
Earbud did this a lot, and I think Beethoven did as well. But like, and what is a car if not a metal dog? But it's this is like the love interest one, but also like a weird thing that happens a lot of these is there's like a heist thing or like a like that's actually not an uncommon
Yeah.
sequel trope that like
Like a
there's
criminal
bandits
gets
and-
involved.
yeah,
kind of
there's
thing,
some kind of and then later on we get like an evil version. The one we didn't get, which I just remembered I thought of as a continue the franchise, so maybe I'll save it for then. I'm gonna write it down now. So hold on to your butts until we get to that. But yeah, anything else to say about like what you thought of it?
It's just, I don't know, I just enjoyed seeing the kind of universe expanded in the way it is very satisfying to get to a love interest one.
Yeah, and also I think as well that like this one has more of a sense of adventure because it's like it's globe trotting, and yeah, and with the crime stuff involved, I don't know, it's just a bit more like wacky without being too crazy. But what do you think it has in Rotten Tomatoes?
71.
But a little bit lower.
69.
No, a little bit lower.
65.
A little bit lower.
30.
Much higher.
31.
Double it.
62.
Take away 2.
60.
Yep. 50% with audiences. Are you ready for one of the dumbest pieces of IMDb trivia we've ever had on the show?
This is a high bar, dude. We've had some dumb IMDb trivia.
We have. Oh god, this one is. At the time of the movie release, Baskin and Robbins did a promotional ice cream flavor tie-in called Monte Carlo Crunch. The author does not remember the specific flavor and makeup of the ice cream used for the flavor.
Didn't need to put that part in there. I'd be happy with Monte Carlo Crunch. The author, as in the person writing the piece of IMDb trivia.
Yeah, I guess, and they refer to themselves as the author. My
that
mind
is a
blown.
bold claim. I am an author. Oh, what do you write? Oh, pieces of IMDb trivia?
Yeah,
cool.
as featured on the Cult Option podcast. Oh, what's the segment called? Oh, you didn't need to know that.
That doesn't matter. I thought that there's some fun, insane stuff in this. There's one part where Herbie survives a rock slide. Like all these rocks just fall on him, and he's fine, and everyone's fine. Thought that was insane, and I enjoyed that a lot. There's a part where they have to convince the love interest that Herbie has, the girl car, they have to convince the girl car to race without Herbie because Herbie's missing. And then when Herbie shows up, they have to convince Herbie to go without the girl car. And the way they do it is they tell the girl car that Herbie's like a Casanova and they've had to do this with several other cars and break up with other cars for him. And then when Herbie turns up, they have to tell him that the other car didn't actually care about him. And it's a very dark thing to do to a person, and they do it to a car. And the film, they do end up like admitting the error of their ways, but it's nowhere near the same like betrayal that I think a human would feel responding to those things revealing to not be true. But there you go.
It's funny. I will say, like, it does feel like we're rushing through this podcast quite a bit. But you know, hey, they can't all be fucking 2.5 hour Pirates of the Caribbean podcast, can they?
They get what you give them.
The thing about this franchise is that it's kind of the other side of the coin from Critters, where it's like, you know, if you have like a bell curve distribution of like, and at the top is like, and it's like quality of franchise, versus like how easy it is to talk about. It's like the mirror image of Critters. It's much better, but it's in that same like hard to talk about kind of. It's like there exists a world where this is one of the biggest stamps on pop culture of all time. But now it's like it certainly has its fans, and most people have a passing knowledge of it, mainly because of Herbie Fully Loaded. But it's like, yeah, there's a parallel dimension where there's like Herbie derbies where everyone paints like their car like Herbie.
Herbie derby.
And
it sounds like Herpaderp.
It's actually from the tagline of this film, which was "The love bug turns the great race into a Herbie derby."
Nice. I don't know if there's a parallel universe, man. I think we were just born in the wrong generation, son. Like, I think that
call me son.
in the 70s, Herbie could have absolutely occupied the same space that its modern day equivalent to the Fast and Furious occupies now. You know what I mean? Like, I think maybe we just don't live in an age where everyone knows what Herbie is. Because
but that's what I'm saying is that like there exists a world where this is like, you know, like Critters was Gremlins, that like Herbie was Back to the Future.
Right. Okay. I remember when Herbie Fully Loaded came out, and everyone being like, "See, there's a new Herbie movie coming out," and I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
Like, and I remember, because I would have been like 12, but I could tell from the titling scheme that it was clearly a sequel, because it was called Herbie Fully Loaded. It's like, well, obviously that means there's a Herbie
he's
movie.
Previously not been fully loaded,
Yeah,
and this
obviously,
is some kind of noteworthy thing that was worth making a film about.
Obviously. There you go.
All right, so 3 years later, we have Herbie Goes Bananas, the film which tanked the franchise. Again, directed by
the Batman and Robin of the franchise.
Yeah, again, directed by Vincent McKeevity. What is this one about?
So this one's set in Rio, I think. Yeah, sure. And it's about a couple of tourists, American tourists, who go to Rio, let's say.
No, it's in Mexico.
Mexico.
Oh, no, sorry. And then they bought a cruise ship to Rio, yeah.
There you go. And they're looking for a car to drive around in, and they find Herbie at like a sales yard, and they buy him, and it turns out that, what is the conflict? There's like is it another race?
They don't want him to go bananas, but then he does.
No, there's like bad guys pursuing them for some reason, but I don't know if it's a race thing. It's more as in a race car thing. It's more that I don't know. I can't remember. There's a little boy that is a little thief, and no one likes him.
Yeah. He's the and he calls Herbie Ocho. Herbie's said exactly once in this film. From thereafter, he's called Ocho, which means 8. And the kid explains at the end, they're like, "Why do you call him Ocho, dumbass? That means 8. It says 53. You fucking imbecile." And the kid's like, "Yeah, 5-3. 5 plus 3 is 8."
Yeah, I think that it is not a good enough reason to call him Ocho. It's not the moment it wants to be. I don't remember entirely what this movie's about, but I do remember there are some insane scenes in it. I remember Herbie has to walk the plank of a cruise ship, and you just see what was presumably a production team literally throwing a V-dub off a boat, which is just insane. It's so funny, man.
Yeah, and
it's
you know
so
what?
funny.
That V-dub beetle is still at the bottom of the ocean. They never retrieved it.
Oh, no. Oh, that is horrible.
We should genuinely, when Cult Popture is making enough money, we should pull a James Cameron and rent submarines and discover the wreck of Herbie Goes Bananas.
Does this mean this is the second franchise we've done where there is an object from the franchise at the bottom of a body of water?
Following Friday the 13th.
Following Friday the 13th, because in actual Camp Crystal Lake, there is a Jason Voorhees chained to the bottom of the lake. Presumably where 4 people a year see him. I can't imagine
it's a tourist thing.
Ah, okay.
It's not just like designed to scare tourists.
It's not just a real life Easter egg.
But yeah, no. Again, there's like this antique gold disc instead of a diamond.
That's
quartz
right.
This time,
that's
right. Kind of the villains want that, and Herbie's getting away. This features Cloris Leachman
from Malcolm in the Middle.
Yep. It's funny seeing her. Like, she's one of those people that it's like, this is 1980, and she's just always been old.
Yeah, no, it's insane.
She's like Bill Nye.
This also features Herbie covered in bananas
Yeah.
as a disguise.
There is a scene where he literally does go bananas.
Yeah.
And he flings bananas at the villains. Who I'm just now realizing one of the villains was Alex Rocco, who's the voice of Roger Myers Sr. in The Simpsons.
I thought you were going to say Roger Rabbit. I want to be like, please, Herbie.
Yeah.
The bananas look gross on camera. Like when you squish a banana, it doesn't look good.
Do you know what? I would go one step further and say it looks gross in real life. When
Wow.
you squish a banana.
These are bold claims, Richard. I don't know if I can sanction these claims.
I'm kicked off the podcast.
No, okay. I think this is maybe the worst one. I don't have
this
too
is
much
commonly
to say.
regarded as being the worst one, and it's one of those films that it did tank the franchise a little bit, and that's why we didn't get another one for 17 years.
But then again, I also wouldn't necessarily regard it as especially.
yeah, no,
awful
like
either.
like we said, it's definitely like it's a very consistent franchise.
Yeah.
In a weird kind of way. Yeah, and so while I would say, yeah, the first one is 4 stars, the rest are 3 stars, this one's 2.5 stars. It's still like, yeah, fuck it. It's like, and the thing that we talked about early on in this podcast was like meeting films on their terms. And if you do, you'll have a good time. Like, none of these movies are bad if you're expecting a family fun movie,
No,
you know,
not at all.
like
Yeah,
something you can
exactly.
chuck on the kids and you'll be able to follow along and it won't be fucking torturous as a parent.
Yeah, nice.
Another dumb IMDb. The rust scene on the car was actually not real rust. It was made using paint. All the rust are painted on the car to give a rusty look. If you look closely, then you will see that all the rust are in same style.
That is dumb. However, that does remind me that Herbie gets like beaten to death by the end of this film. He looks like shit.
What? Figuratively beaten to death in this film.
Yeah.
Maybe
Literally.
we'll see a literal interpretation of that coming up.
No, but he looks like shit by the end of this film. He's covered in rust. He's crushed. He's got bananas all over him.
He's like
It
spray
is-
painted and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, he looks insane by the end of it.
It's one of those things where it was like someone set out to be like, I'm eating the franchise.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah.
So the tagline for this film, as we're doing taglines, I think this is the last one I have. The tagline for this film was, yes, we have a bonanza.
I'm glad that they are secure enough in themselves to admit that.
Yeah, do you know what that's a reference to?
What?
Do you know, there's a song called Yes, We Have No Bananas, which was like, I believe during one of the world wars was like a comedy song about you know, like a lack of
What the fuck?
resources.
Does Homer Simpson sing it in
Yes,
an
he does.
episode of The
He
Simpsons?
sings it and cries.
Yes. He sings it along with Cats in the Cradle.
Yeah. He's going through songs in his head. Yeah, it's
I've always wondered what that joke meant, and now I have a bit of a lead on it.
It came out in 1923, so it wasn't during a world war, but must be misremembering that.
During the US banana shortage, yes, of course.
Yeah. So do you want to? I'll pull up some lyrics, shall I? Just so we have. It mostly just goes. There's a fruit store on our street. It's run by a Greek, and he keeps good things to eat. But you should hear him speak. When you ask him anything, he never says no. He just yeses you to death as he takes your dough. He tells you, yes, we have no bananas. We have no bananas today with string beans and onions, cabbages and scallions. It says cabbages. And all sorts of fruit and say we have an old-fashioned tomato, a Long Island potato. But yes, we have no bananas. We have no bananas today.
Very nice. That sounds like the Herbie of songs.
Real good.
Real good, but I didn't think I was going to enjoy it when I started.
All right, so there was a bit of a gap. 17 years, in fact.
God.
And then we got The Love Bug, or The Wonderful World of Disney presents The Love Bug, or Disney's The Love Bug, or like there's a TV show called The Wonderful World of Disney, and this is an episode called The Love Bug. It's real, like, everywhere you look, it's different.
Right.
It was a made-for-TV like special, and it has a very made-for-TV feel. It was directed by Peyton Reed, who we remember from the Ant-Man films and Bring It On, and the live-action segments of the Back to the Future animated series. If you're a patron and listen to our thoughts on that series,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is what, like, of all the like Peyton Reed is the director whose career I'm most familiar with out of like all the other directors in his class. Does that make sense? Like the level of director he is a type of director I shouldn't know that much about.
Well, I think the level of director he is pre-Ant-Man, I would say. Like he's
Right.
definitely like clashing those Marvel checks now, and you know.
That's true. But yeah, it's weird to know all this stuff about Peyton Reed's career. Also weird that not only is this the only film in the series where I know of the director, it's the only one so far where I recognize any of the actors, despite being a made-for-TV movie. I mean, I guess...
You
don't
also
know.
talked about how you recognize Mr. Banks from Mary Poppins, and
That's true.
obviously Dean Jones from Beethoven.
And Cloris Leachman. But my point is, this one stars Bruce Campbell, who feels more famous than anyone else that we've talked about so far. But I understand there is a time era. Yeah. There's a time and a place to talk down on Dean Jones, and this is not it.
What is this one about?
This one is the first half is sort of just a remake of the first film, where it's like there's a racer and there's an evil racer and he sells Herbie because he doesn't like it, and then Bruce Campbell picks him up and discovers he's sentient through his wacky sidekick who believes the sentience before he does. But then it takes a left turn and it's like, surprise, it's actually an evil Herbie movie. This movie has a dark Herbie in it, a black Volkswagen named Horace. The Hate Bug, which we made up and is not said in the film.
I didn't make it up. It's on the Wikipedia page, where it says, I'll find it and tell you the quote. It says, introduce an evil black Volkswagen named Horace the Hate Bug, giving the film a much darker tone than the other Herbie films.
It does have a darker tone than the other Herbie films.
It does.
And they sort of race and they beat the bad one. And in this one, instead of the first one, if you remember, the car splits in half, and sort of so that the back seat separated from the front seat. And this one, Herbie splits in half again, but so that the other way, so that the
driver is separated from the passenger.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I fucking loved that as like a we're doing the original, but we slightly updated it. I was like, I cheered. Yeah. As I was watching this on YouTube in 12p.
Yeah,
it's very low. It's free on YouTube, but it's very low quality.
Yes. And look, it started out and I was like, ugh, a made-for-TV one. Here we go.
Yeah, you
and
messaged me and said, the first bad Herbie movie. And I was like, I don't know, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And then I kept watching, and you know what? Because it complies with those sequel tropes that I always love to see, not because I enjoy them, but just because it's funny to document them. Like, I was like, cool, man. Cool, good stuff. It's all right. And I think one of the things I really enjoyed about it is that it shares this weird connection with Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, where two of the actors from The Mummy are in this film, but they're actors I've really only ever seen in The Mummy and in very few other things, which is John Hannah, who plays Jonathan in The Mummy. He plays the villain in this, and I don't know what the character's name in The Love Bug is, but he's Simon. The assistant to Bruce Campbell, and he plays Benny in The Mummy, who is an actor I've only ever seen in what's that other Stephen Sommers movie about the octopus or that's set at sea? I'm gonna look it up.
Deep Blue Sea?
No. Stephen Sommers ocean movie. Deep Rising. 1998, a year after The Mummy. He's in that. And I've only ever seen this guy talk like this in The Mummy. He's like, oh, O'Connell, you don't understand. I just want to... Hey, O'Connell, it looks like I got all the horses. And in this, I didn't recognize him at first because in The Mummy, he's like a very clean cut kind of, but at the same time, very snivelly dude who's always wearing a fez. And in this one, he's got like long hair and he's like a classic garage mechanic. and
Maybe
I
you've
didn't
seen him in
recognize
a
him.
bunch of other stuff and just not recognized it.
Yeah. I didn't recognize him at first, and then he started talking, but in an American accent, and he was like, kind of thing to his voice, and I was like, Benny? And it was so funny to see him. I just like, this is a guy I've only ever seen in The Mummy, and it's like, I don't know. It was enjoyable for me, and I thought that was fun. So there you go.
So we talked about in the last film that Herbie was figuratively beaten to death. In this film, he actually gets beaten to death. It's the picture on our Instagram where Bruce Campbell finds him and he's been absolutely fucking destroyed. And then it cuts to R.I.P. Herbie and they're at his funeral and they're burying this car. But then Dean Jones shows up as Jim Douglas, and that was when I was kind of like, oh yeah, it's a made-for-TV movie, but I got really emotional seeing Jim Douglas again and seeing him mourn Herbie, and then they obviously go like, nah, like, it's a car, like, let's just fix it, kind of thing.
Why are you burying it? You can just fucking fix it, it's a car.
Although there is a bit of like a, what is it, bootstrap? No, not bootstrap, the like axe handle paradox.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That like, so there's the thing, like, if you have an axe and then you replace the handle, and then later on you replace the blade, is it still the same axe? By the end of these films, Herbie is not the same car. But he's still sentient. And then this film is where you actually find out why he's sentient, isn't it?
So, sort of. This is the dog-eared thing that I wanted to talk about. So in
I'll cross that out.
First of all, in Herbie, the love bug, sorry, this one here, he gets beaten to death by Horace, the hate bug, who is made by a mad German scientist who created Herbie. So he created Herbie, and while he was creating Herbie, he accidentally knocked a photo of his dead wife into the alloy that he was making. And he believes that the love and personality of his dead wife has now like imbued Herbie's alloy with sentience, basically. And so when he's making the hate bug, they put a picture of the villain in the mixture because that the villain loves himself more than he loves anyone else. It's a pretty funny joke, and that is what sort of gives Herbie life. But then also in the original Love Bug, Buddy Hackett talks about how he's spent some time in Tibet where he learned that everything has a soul. And so in the first ever Herbie film, that is kind of the reason, is that everything has a soul. But in this one, it's a more tangible, scientific, I guess, scientifically accurate reason, which is that it's haunted by a ghost of a dead woman, or something like that. Or no, it's not so much the ghost, it's the feeling of love. And that's what makes Herbie Herbie. And so I thought that was interesting because if these movies never explained how Herbie was sentient, I don't think I would have thought to question it.
Yeah.
But they still do. And it's like, it's good.
Yeah. But yeah, as I was saying though, once they've rebuilt him, there's a moment where Jim Douglas like sits inside Herbie again and is like, "Hello, old friend," kind of that sort of thing. And then it was such a nice moment. It's that classic Peyton Reed emotional payoff that he's known for.
He's so well. If you go on his director's IMDb page, it says director trademark.
Yeah. But it was one of those things where I was like, I didn't think I would recognize him showing up, you know? Like I'd seen on the Wikipedia page that's like featuring a special appearance of Dean Jones. And I was like, oh yeah, it'll just be like he'll give a thumbs up at the end and I won't recognize him. But I was like, fuck, like this is a good moment.
He's a good actor, I think, and I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
He's got a very warm presence to him.
Yeah, that's the thing, eh? There's very, very little information on this film. It doesn't have a Rotten Tomatoes score. 50% with audiences, though. It says the only piece of information I have about this film has yet to be released on DVD or Blu-ray format, which has been requested of Disney by many fans, both of the Herbie series and Bruce Campbell. Do you reckon it's like fans of Herbie and fans of Bruce Campbell, or it's been requested by fans of Herbie and Bruce Campbell has also requested it?
Oh, I can't imagine Bruce Campbell has requested it.
Yeah.
Because Bruce Campbell fans are the type of fans that want to consume all Bruce Campbell content.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's probably more likely.
I mean, it's on YouTube. Just fucking watch
Yeah.
it there. But yeah, I do understand that you'd want it on DVD or Blu-ray.
Mm.
Yeah, I liked this more than I thought. What I said to you was when you said it was bad, I was like, this is the perfect, like, if you grew up with Herbie and you'd shown it to your kids, and then it's 1997, you see an ad on ABC that they're doing a new Love Bug special, you'd be like, oh yeah, and you'd sit around, you'd watch it with your kids, and you'd have a great time.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that it is better than what I expected it would be based on the start. And it is, if you made this into a feature, like a cinematic release, I don't know if you'd have to change that much, because it doesn't, it's, I don't think Herbie was ever that big of a budget. And so
yeah,
it's not like it's missing that je ne sais quoi that a bigger budget often provides. And by je ne sais quoi, I mean production value. Do you know that je ne sais quoi is actually French for production value?
Wow, yeah. Also just found out that I know you're joking, but I didn't just buy into your hilarious jape.
How
So
dare you.
Disney television has led like a this might be like ubiquitous in the United States, which I don't have here. There's like they've had various anthology TV series over the years. It's the second longest running primetime program on American television behind Hallmark Hall of Fame. So since 1954 to now, it's gone by a few different names. It's currently called The Wonderful World of Disney. And it would be like, it's just essentially like a television event that's on ABC and will have, so it's like often it's just like they'll play Thor Ragnarok and it will have the Wonderful World of Disney like title before it kind of thing. Sometimes it's like specials and sometimes it's like, they'll get someone to introduce it or there'll be something like that, but
right, nice.
So that's how that fits in. But yeah, so this was an episode of that.
Yeah, understood.
Okay,
the second franchise in a row we've had to watch episodes of a TV show as part of the film franchise.
It's also our second, probably third franchise this year, which features a Scottish villain.
We doing this? We're doing more useless statistics? I've got a couple.
Let's fucking do it. After Davy Jones, but I'm assuming there's also one in James Bond. I just couldn't be bothered revisiting James Bond mentally to remember if there was.
If there was what, sorry?
If there was a Scottish villain.
Right. No, I say, okay, well, speaking of James Bond, this is our second decade-spanning franchise with a film in which characters drive a car that can go underwater and then they nearly get attacked by a shark. And I think Herbie Rides Again, I think it is. It might not be. No, I think it is actually. They go underwater in Herbie and nearly get attacked by a shark underwater. In The Spy Who Loved Me, I think he drives a car underwater, but then it's a separate scene where they nearly get attacked by sharks and Jaws, the character, falls into the shark tank.
Because they get attacked by Jaws.
Yep, and now I've got a piece of up top or randomly placed useless statistics that I've been thinking about all week, Richard, and I was like, this is so funny. And then I went to write it down and I was like, this isn't that funny.
Yeah.
So here it goes. Let me know what you think. So this is our 9th franchise, which falls under a category that I'm calling the unconventionally wise nomad. Where an unlikely person, animal, or sentient inanimate object is often one of only very few recurring characters who travels to different groups of people each movie to show them the power of friendship, the power of family, save the world, whatever. An unconventionally wise nomad. So the other ones I've got listed here, there's some obvious ones. I think the most obvious ones that comply with this are Beethoven and Medea, which are both about a character who every movie is a different set of supporting cast that they are the constant character in, and despite appearances, they end up saving the day, bringing people together, whatever. So those are and then I was going to throw in like a wacky one that you might not expect, but then it became majority wacky ones. So the other ones I've got here are Godzilla, The Mask, The Man with No Name, Mad Max, Mission Impossible, James Bond, and then arguably Austin Powers, I guess. Though Austin Powers has a lot more shared characters than the other ones. So in my head, I was like, I'll be like Beethoven, Medea, and James Bond, and it'll be real funny. And then I looked at all the franchises we've done, and I'm like, there's more here that are just as valid as James Bond, and they're not very funny. So there you go. What do you think of that? That is a franchise trope that we've recognized. Like, it feels like Air Bud should count as well, but it doesn't. They all have the same background cast,
right.
Same with Air Buddies and stuff like that. But yeah, the Herbie series is the car version of Beethoven.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Your uproarious laughter lets me know that indeed was as funny as I was hoping it would be. There we go.
Okay.
There's this our third car-based franchise after Transformers and Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
Yeah, have there been any other car-based ones? I don't think so. Is this our... I don't know, maybe that's it. Those are the only ones I can think of.
It's our second franchise in a row where the main things that it involves around start with the letters CAR. After Yu-Gi-Oh! Revolving primarily around cards.
Wow. Very cool. I'm sure there's probably more we could probably squeeze out of this if we tried.
Yeah, but let's not. Let's move on to Herbie Fully Loaded, the one that most people will be familiar with. That came out in 2005. It was directed by Angela Robinson. What's this one about?
So this one is about Lindsay Lohan. And she...
And what's she wearing?
We'll talk about this later.
It's actually important to my notes.
Oh, okay. What's she wearing?
Yeah, no, we'll talk about it later, but it will come up in the notes.
It's not as dark or devious as I think it sounds like when we just ask what she's wearing. But she is like come back to her hometown for summer. She's just scored. She's going to go away to New York to do a reporter job at ESPN. And her dad, who's played by Michael Keaton, and her family are like big NASCAR. A NASCAR family. Yeah. And while she's back in town, her dad's like, look, I'll buy you a car from the junkyard so I don't have to chaperone you around all the time. And so they end
what
up
car
getting
does she
Herbie. And he's fully loaded. And she runs into an old high school friend played by Justin Long. And they sort of together discover that Herbie is sentient and wacky and wild and drives faster than they're comfortable with. Very cool stuff. And then they kind of become intertwined with Trip Murphy, played by Matt Dillon, who is this kind of arrogant NASCAR champion who ends up wanting to race against Herbie and Max, who is Lindsay Lohan's Maggie with a helmet on where no one can tell who she is. And like, I get that it's a they find out eventually it's Maggie thing, but I feel like they don't play it up as much as they should have, and they could probably just have cut it out. The main reason for the Max mistake in there is so that her dad doesn't think it's her racing, because I think the mum died in a car accident.
Well, it's like, so Lindsay Lohan had a car accident.
Right.
And so they're like, oh, we don't trust you behind the wheel. But like her brother, Breckenmeyer, is a second Breckenmeyer franchise of the year. He was in one of he's been in Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
Yes, he was in Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy's Dead.
Yeah. He's
Freddy's Dead,
he's a successful racer.
Yeah.
And so, but her dad, Michael Keaton, is like, I don't want you racing again. And then at the end, it reveals that he's she's the spitting image of her mother, and he can't bear to lose her all over again.
Yeah, and Cheryl Hines is also there as like Michael Keaton's NASCAR manager or something.
Yeah,
who I always enjoy a good Cheryl Hines role.
Yep,
personally.
like Bad Moms too.
Yep, I like Cheryl Hines.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, again, it ends in like a final race, and
Ends in a
Herbie
final
finishes
race.
the race in one piece, which I was actually disappointed about.
true. But they do it. The main characters kiss. She wins the approval of her dad, and everyone loves everyone.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful ending.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we were talking about what Lindsay Lohan was wearing. Let's go back to this.
I'm very nervous about this topic of discussion.
So in the
I don't
film,
know.
she's wearing a lot of like low plunging necklines and short skirts, and this was kind of Lindsay's last film before she went off the deep end, and
Right.
puberty hit her quite hard, kind of thing. She went from being like a very wholesome young star to like being quite well endowed in the chess department.
Oh my God.
So much so that allegedly Disney had to use CGI to cover up some necklines and reduce the size of her breasts. The director denies it, but Lindsay has said she thought it was funny that they had to do it.
Okay, it has become relevant.
Yeah.
I thought you were just going to be like,
And
And
AJ,
it's fucking
how
hot.
fucking sexy is Lindsay Lohan in this movie?
I would never
with
say that.
with respect, she's very attractive in this movie. But then also, I kind of understand why CGI would have to be involved, because it does borderline on this is maybe a little too sexy for a Disney family movie. And I say this as someone who I don't really care, and people should be exposed to sex in healthy, constructive ways much earlier in their lives, I think.
Yeah.
Exposed to it and have it explained to them, not have sex much earlier in their lives. And so I say this being more me being surprised at what Disney let across the line, as opposed to me being like, this is inappropriate for children. I hope that saves me. I hope my heart is, and my conscience is cleared from explaining it that way. But yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if they had to do certain things to make her a little bit more conservative, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we handled that well. I think people are going to compliment on us on covering that topic.
What does this have on Rotten Tomatoes?
What would you guess?
I'm going to guess like 65.
41.
Yeah, I don't think this was a popularly received movie.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a bad movie. I thought it was
I think
just
it's fine.
as good.
I think it's on par with the rest of the Herbie movies.
But yeah, I think that it feels more like a 2005 Disney live action comedy than a Herbie movie, I would say. It's got that kind of feel to it, that vibe to it, that school holidays kind of movie that your friends saw but you didn't see.
Oh my God, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
This was the first time I saw this film. You saw it in the cinema, right?
No, I didn't see it at the cinema. I think we got it out on DVD for a family movie night. I remembered zero about it though, so maybe I didn't see it. But yeah, I liked it. I thought Michael Keaton's great in it. I said to you, I love how Michael Keaton is clearly just into his role in Herbie Fully Loaded as he is into Birdman.
Yeah.
You know, like he gives it his all, and that's really admirable. This was pre-Michael Keaton comeback though.
Yeah, and it's so there's like a period of time where he wasn't like huge. Yeah, I mean, 2014 is really when his career resurged. But he wasn't doing a lot of stuff. But yeah, so it's fun seeing things in between then.
I just can't stop thinking about Lindsay Lohan, I think. I was so in love with Lindsay Lohan, man.
Oh my God,
and I was talking to a workmate about this, that like everyone's like, oh, it's a shame what happened to Lindsay Lohan.
And you're like, I don't think it's that bad.
But I also think like I don't know the specifics of what actually happened to her, but I understand she fell into drugs and came back, I guess.
Yeah, just legal issues as well. Like,
yeah. But like, I reckon it's also something to be said about like society's double standard for women, because
100%.
Like there are probably 100 male actors who have just had as just as tragic of a rise and fall as
like
Lindsay
the guy
Lohan.
from Mighty Ducks.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Or like I was thinking about like someone like Shia LaBeouf. Like now I'm excited to see a Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah,
movie.
well, Shia LaBeouf was like, yeah, it was fun to watch. Like, oh, now he's doing drag. He never did anything like. He was a lot more artistic with his
Yeah.
with his downfall, rather than like it wasn't as like sad. I guess it was kind of more like, what's he doing?
I don't know. I just feel like people are horny for a tragic female actress.
Oh yeah,
Fall
no,
from
yeah.
grace
People
story.
love these stories, man, and it's like, and the desire from the media to create that creates it.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
the hounding people like Lindsay Lohan or Amanda Bynes,
Britney Spears.
Britney
classic
Spears, like
example.
at that age. Oh my god, it must be horrible for them. And it's like, no wonder you'd turn to drugs and alcohol and things like that.
I do, yeah. So it's a shame that every like pre-fall Lindsay Lohan movie is marked with this like, it's a shame what happened to Lindsay, and then every post comeback Lindsay Lohan movie is like, Lindsay Lohan's in this. But this is actually our third Lindsay Lohan franchise, I think.
After
Machete.
Yeah.
She's in Machete, and she's also in Scary Movie 5, where she
Shit.
makes fun of herself in a way that's like, I reckon Lindsay Lohan has got a like a reconnaissance in her. I think we get a Lohanescence. We need a Lindsay Lohanescence. I think she's got talent that we, if given the right director and the right script, we will be able to see one day.
Yeah,
And maybe it'll be a sequel to Herbie Fully Loaded.
maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that she's like necessarily willing to do that, but it's hard to say. She was in Chapter 27 with Jared Leto.
There you go.
Yeah. And then she was in
That's
a
all
30
you
Seconds to Mars music video.
Oh, okay. Not liking where this is going. And they are... Oh, they're married.
Oh, she's part of his cult.
Oh,
Yeah, so it is funny though that like because she did like Disney films when she was young, like obviously like The Parent Trap, Freaky Friday. But then Mean Girls felt like, she blew up and became like a sex symbol, like it was like a lot of it, like that film was devoted to like, look how hot she looks. And then
Which
going back
is
a year
frustrating.
later and doing Herbie Fully Loaded, it's like, yeah, I'm a Disney
Right.
girl again.
that is interesting. It's frustrating with Mean Girls, because Mean Girls is such a good film,
Yeah,
right? Like, Mean
fuck
Girls
yeah,
is a
man.
good
Mean
movie.
Girls is fantastic.
And it's
So it's Freaky Friday.
it's very much its point that it's about over-sexualization and things. We're seeing something similar happen with that French Cuties movie at the moment as well, where like Netflix released a real sexualized poster for a movie about the dangers of over-sexualizing underage girls.
Yeah, but then if you watch like clips from the film, it is like, you don't need to shoot it like this.
Potentially. I think I might watch the film, because by all accounts it's a good movie. Like, it's like a Sundance film.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this sounds interesting. So I might check it out and make up my own opinion on it instead of just being devil's advocate for it whenever someone brings it up. So yeah, I don't know. Is this the part of the Herbie podcast where we just talk exclusively about Lindsay Lohan, or should we move back into Herbie specifically?
Okay, what else do you want to say?
Is there any Herbie specific moments in this film that you really enjoyed?
There's a funny thing, like Herbie's more expressive in this movie. Like his bumper at the front like bends up and down to smile and whatnot. Also, their last name in this film was Peyton, which you were like, oh, we should hilariously add a piece of dumb IMDb trivia that says that they might be named after Peyton Reed, but it's already there, and it says that they are named after Peyton Reed. So
that's so great. It's so great that we're at the point where we can predict what dumb IMDb trivia is going to be before we look.
Yeah.
Because, of course, they're not named after Peyton Reed. The movie doesn't even acknowledge... Didn't you say that this movie decanonizes Peyton Reed's The Love Bug?
Yeah, I mean, it ignores... It says it picks up... I don't think there's anything that directly decanonizes it, but it picks up... It ignores that sequel and picks up, I think, from just where Herbie was when he's kind of, all beaten within an inch of his life at the end of Goes Bananas.
So when was what's the time difference between Goes Bananas and Fully Loaded?
25 years.
That's a bummer. That means he rusted away with nary an adventure between Goes Bananas and Fully Loaded, where he just ended up in a junk pile. But then he came back fully loaded. So
Yeah. Now, you said something to me earlier in the week, which I found interesting. You said that you've gone bananas and you've been fully loaded, but you've never gone to Monte Carlo or ridden again. I disagreed with the fact that you've ridden again, but do you want to tell us about a time where you either went bananas or were fully loaded?
Okay. I've been fully loaded before. Like, money-wise, I've had heaps of money at times in my life.
Is that what you think the film is about? I think
Well,
it's more about like he's fully loaded,
mean?
he's full of gas.
It's full of gas. I'm almost always fully loaded then. I've gone bananas when I've been drunk. I've gone bananas when I was a little kid. I was a very hyperactive child. I've never been to Monte Carlo though, and I've ridden again in certain contexts, but not the one specific to the film. And if we're judging fully loaded by the same, it has to be what it means in the film, which is full of gas.
Yeah.
Then I haven't ridden again in the same way that Herbie is a car that... What is riding? I don't know what I'm talking about. What about you? Have you ever gone bananas?
Nah, I'm a pretty chilled out guy.
Have you ever been fully loaded?
No.
Wow. You don't know what you're missing out on, mate. Do you remember in the early to mid 2000s when every kids film was like this one? Was like fully loaded? Like Kangaroo Jack, Spy Kids. They all had that like gleam on them, and for a while it just felt like movies would be like this forever.
Yeah.
Like, this is the one your parents take to.
What's like an example of a recent movie that you would say is like the equivalent of this?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not sure there have been, or at least they're not as like well advertised anymore. Like, kids' movies are usually like CGI stuff now. There's not so often live action.
Yeah, or I guess they're
movies
straight
anymore.
to Netflix and like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sonic the Hedgehog, probably the closest recent example.
Yeah. So this came in 2005, and like this following on from being a product of its time. This is a very 2005 review. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, stating, "The movie is pretty cornball. Little kids would probably enjoy it, but their older brothers and sisters will be rolling their eyes, and their parents will be using their iPods."
Oh, Roger.
That was great.
Roger. That is great.
So my IMDb, director Angela Robinson said in the commentary that she purposely left hidden crew equipment and cheap camera tricks in the film to give Herbie fans something to look for that was fun, and to also simply aggravate her editor, who practically begged her to fix the problems before the film was released. Now, that's not a mark of very good directing. like you're making a film and you're like, oh, let's give them something that's fun, a bunch of mistakes. It's like, no, work on making the film fun. And then also her editor being like, let's just CGI out the boom guy. She's like, no.
I reckon it's that there are a bunch of mistakes left in the film, and someone else has no evidence of any of this, and they're trying to defend it.
Right. Yeah.
It's for fun.
Yeah. I mean, if it was like, the original had a bunch of this, and they did it as like a tribute, that I could get behind that. But this is just like, what?
I mean, I didn't notice anything.
Yeah,
Did
neither. So here's one that's just like, oh god, I'm not looking forward to having to read this. When Tripp slams Herbie's trunk down, he says, "Who's laughing now?" The same line Ash Bruce Campbell, there's no like brackets, it just his name is Ash Bruce Campbell, says when he cuts his hand off in Evil Dead 2 and various times in the Evil Dead video games. Matt Dillon looks a lot like Bruce Campbell, who played Hank Cooper in the previous Herbie movie, The Wonderful World of Disney, The Love Bug. Also, the part of Scary Movie 2 that they watch in the drive-in is a reference to Army of Darkness. Herbie movies are about an inanimated object. It's not inanimated. Object who has free will, like the skeleton at Scary Movie 2 or Ash's hand at Evil Dead 2.
Holy shit. That is a dumb piece of IMDb trivia, but it's made me realise this other connection,
Yeah.
which is that in Herbie Fully Loaded, you see them very briefly watching Scary Movie 2 at an outdoor cinema, which is weird that you can go on Disney Plus and see a clip from like R-rated comedy Scary Movie 2. But Lindsay Lohan would then go on to be in Scary Movie 5. So does that mean that in the world of Herbie Fully Loaded, does Scary Movie 5 exist in the world of Herbie Fully Loaded? Because that means
No, they stopped at the second one.
that Maggie Payton will one day grow up to see her celebrity lookalike in a cameo scene in the belated
I'm glad that you did say,
Scary
does that
Movie
mean
5.
Maggie ends up starring in Scary Movie 5?
No,
Thank
not
you
at
for
all.
not doing
But
that.
you
I
know who
appreciate
is in
that.
Scary Movie 5 as well? Medea. Meaning... this is a Tommy West. Herbie is the Tommy Westfall between the absent-minded professor / Flubber, Scary Movie, and Medea. Herbie. There's a Venn diagram in there somewhere.
Medea Fully Loaded.
I'll let the listeners work out the exact basics of the Venn diagram.
So that's the Herbie franchise. Overall, thoughts?
It is fine. I assume we're going to rank it soon, and I have no desire to rank it particularly low, nor particularly high, but above the Nymphomaniac constant.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be up there. Like, there's a lot of franchises that we have higher up that are like, this was a cool franchise, but there's like one or two real shit movies in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are no bad movies in this franchise. So I only got a couple of segments left. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion on The Love Bug. Continue the franchise.
I've got a continue the franchise that's as low effort as my Pirates of the Caribbean continue the franchise was high effort. This is
Nice.
as bad as that one was good.
There is a couple of real life
Oh,
continue the franchises. There's Herbie the Love Bug TV series, which starred Dean Jones as Jim Douglas in every episode.
what the hell?
I say every episode. There's 5 episodes of the show.
Oh, okay.
It was a mid-season replacement series, and it was the last. It came in 1982, so between Goes Bananas and The Love Bug. Yeah, there was a 15-year gap between Herbie the Love Bug TV series and the 1997 film, and there's now been a 15-year gap between the Lindsay Lohan one and now.
Yeah, why did Fully Loaded not propel Herbie back into...
I could not find anything that said like they were planning a sequel or the film didn't perform well enough. But like
You can
presumably
find out how
they
much it-
were bringing it back to do more, right? I wonder if it's Lindsay going off
Yeah.
the rails a bit and killed it, but
But even then, it's like just
recast. It's Herbie, yeah,
it's Herbie with fucking Millie Bobby Brown. I don't know.
yeah. Who
like-
I don't know, hadn't been born yet.
No, I mean, why is there no plans for a Herbie movie in the 2020s?
Well,
is what
I mean,
I'm
probably the best Herbie movie is Bumblebee.
Oh, good point. With Haley Steinfeld in it, who is today's answer to 2005 Lindsay Lohan,
Yeah.
I think, in a lot of ways.
Okay,
Although Lindsay Lohan never had a true grit, did she?
yeah, no. Her trigger was Mean Girls. Okay, so we get there's a weird phenomenon with this podcast that like when we cover a franchise, and it's like obviously when we cover one that has a new film coming out, you expect to see a lot of things about it, but there will often be like a new piece of news about the franchise within a couple of weeks of us covering it. Yesterday or 2 days ago, or within the last week, a new Herbie the Love Bug mural in West Philadelphia, born and raised, it was unveiled, and it's a mural of Herbie the Love Bug, with the purpose of preventing suicide, and it has it's this mural of Herbie, and it says just keep going, and it has QR codes at the bottom of it, which you scan and it leads to like the National Suicide Prevention Helpline, and they had like a Herbie there. Yes, it says keep going on it.
Is it a reference to Herbie nearly killing himself in the first film? Why would Herbie be... That is the most tenuous link I've ever heard in my
It's so
life.
strange, eh? And because it's not like Herbie's... I don't think Herbie's like tied to Philadelphia in any way.
No. I mean, it's all good. I don't have a problem with anything related to suicide prevention, obviously, but like, why Herbie? There are 100 other more relevant, iconic characters you could probably put in place.
Yeah. Imagine you're suicidal and you see that, and then you go home and pull out Disney Plus, watch the first Herbie movie, and there's a scene where Herbie tries to kill himself.
Yeah. It feels like that's something they should have. That's something they should have thought about. Weird.
Okay, so do you want to go first with your Continue the Franchise?
Okay, my Continue the Franchise is an HD re-release of Trip Murphy Undefeated. Which is in Herbie Fully Loaded. Matt Dillon's Trip Murphy mentions that he's got a video game coming out called Trip Murphy Undefeated, which felt like the same kind of thing you'd get with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So I was like, there we go. Just like the remaster of 1 and 2 has come out, let's get a remaster of Trip Murphy Undefeated. That is my Continue the Franchise.
Nice. I might go buy Tony Hawk this afternoon.
It's calling me, dude. It's calling me like the...
Maybe I'll do it on payday. Like
a siren in a Greek myth.
Going,
the Tony Hawk
wee.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Herbie.
Yeah. Okay, so my Continue the Franchise, I've got 2 because one of them's kind of cheating. So, one is that, and I mentioned this earlier, and I'm finally paying it off now, but the one kind of obvious sequel that we didn't get, and which would work very well for this, is to do a...
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it a Prince and a Pauper one?
It is.
Yeah.
That, like, have a sentient car who isn't a race, who's always wanted to be a race car, and then they swap lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, my real Continue the Franchise, and this is a first for film franchise Fortnights, my Continue the Franchise is for a different franchise. It's not for Herbie, but it's taking something from Herbie. The first Herbie movie, The Love Bug, 1969, I fell in love with this film, but one thing that I fucking loved about it was the tone of the film. The fact that it was like, it's still... Like, it's these great characters, and it's all good, clean family fun, and it's set in the 60s, and it's like this... And there's a charm to, like, the low-budget filmmaking, but, like, all the first 4 films all have, like, great, pulpy... They're driving in the car, and there's very obvious, like, green screen going on behind them. But there's another franchise we covered, which was first made in the 60s, which I didn't like, which was James Bond. If I would love for them to reboot James Bond with this tone, like make a spy movie series, and it's James Bond, but it's like it's a fun family movie, and go back to like all the old like silly camera tricks, and have him like actually genuinely like fall in love with someone over the course of the movie, and it's a big payoff at the end when they kiss, not when they like, you know, he forces himself on her sexually.
James Bond goes bananas.
Yeah, like, oh my god, I would love that. Like
James Bond Fully Loaded.
That's my Continue the Franchise, is that James Bond should be a family friendly franchise. That would be so much fun. Like halfway between, like, he's not like a bumbling Pink Panther type Inspector Clouseau. He's still a good spy, and he's still suave. But it's just, you know, have a bit of fun with it.
Okay. Nice.
All right. Do you want to pull up the franchise list?
Do you want to pull up the Letterboxd?
Yes. But you also need to pull up the franchise list. So fucking just do it.
I know. I'm just...
Don't ever fucking question me again. The Love Bug. All right. I'm adding it to the list. Where do you think it should go? Now, what we are doing here, I should mention, is we've got a list of all arguably 113 franchises we've covered on the podcast. Where do you think The Love Bug belongs?
Throw out something above the Nymphomaniac constant, which is a series that has one really good film and one really bad film, so it becomes our benchmark for if a franchise is more good than bad or more bad than good.
So, Nymphomaniac is at 46. Above it is The Mighty Ducks. Again, that's none of these are that bad, but I think The Love Bug is better than that. High School Musical has the 4th one, really dragging it down. Gonna jump up a few. Kung Fu Panda.
I would probably prefer to watch a Kung Fu Panda movie again than a Herbie movie, but no, Kung Fu Panda is definitely ahead of Herbie, man.
Okay, below there, Happy Feet.
Oh, what do you think?
I think we're finding our place somewhere.
I think I could be persuaded either way on Happy Feet. What's beneath Happy Feet?
National Treasure.
Okay.
And below that,
geez.
Shanghai Noon, which I actually think these are kind of similar to.
I think it's better than Shanghai Noon.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's better than National Treasure.
Okay, cool. It's at number 38.
There we go.
Which also,
Wow.
now that we've done this, it has pushed Yu-Gi-Oh! Out of the top 100.
Damn. God. Ah!
All right, let's move it up just to keep it in.
All right, so now we're going to do franchise roulette, yeah? So that's our segment where we pick what franchise we're going to do for the next fortnight. And the way we do this is Richard's going to draw a random number from his random number generator, which correlates to a list of franchises we have written down. I'm going to find what that franchise is and make Richard guess it like an idiot. He'll look like a fool. I'll be like, no, it's not that franchise, you fool. So let's do it.
Turning my volume up on the phone and generating a random number now.
31.
Well, before I tell you what franchise 31 is, everybody, if you liked this podcast, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, all the different social medias. You can find us on Twitter at Cult Pop Show. You can email us at cultpopshowmedia@gmail.com. And because you can also find us on our Discord. Join our Discord. There'll be a link in the description of that. And so you can go there and look for that if you like. And we also have a Patreon, which is our Patreon, patreon.com/cultpopshow, where you can throw in some money if you want to support us. And if
you didn't like the podcast, head along to iTunes and leave a 5-star review with all of your complaints.
Nice. Very cool. All right, Richard, I've got the franchise.
Okay. How many films?
3.
Okay, so it's a trilogy.
It is one that has been in the news recently, but at the same time hasn't been around for a long time.
The franchise hasn't been around for a long time?
Yes, but it was in the news recently.
Okay, give me a... is it a trilogy? Is it 1, 2, 3?
It is 1, 2, 3.
Give me a genre.
It's a pretty big deal. It's one we were going to do, but then I said, hey, maybe we should do this instead, and it ruined our lives for a long time.
Oh, okay. I know what it is. This is a very big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a big deal.
Is this possibly one of the biggest deals we've ever covered on this podcast? Would that be accurate to say?
I think so. I think we were going to do this for our 100th franchise before thinking James Bond might be a better landmark celebration. And so if you're on Patreon, you might remember what we said it is, because we asked our Patreon if they'd prefer we did it this way. What is it, Richard?
The Godfather?
It's the Godfather trilogy. So Godfather Part 2, Godfather Part 3. I guess I'm glad we're watching these before the Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, is re-released.
Yeah, but now you've had Michael Corleone's death spoiled for you.
Presumably, yeah.
Unless he lives in the original Godfather 3.
Yeah. Well, you never know. If you haven't heard recently that Francis Ford Coppola has said that he's recutting the Godfather 3 in the great Snyder Cut culture that we live in, which I've come around to, Richard. It was really annoying to have people say release the Snyder Cut over and over again, but now that the floodgates are opened and now everyone's wanting to release their director's cut, release them all, I say. Yeah. Release them all. That's a good thing. This is a good thing. You know what I mean? This is a good thing. Anyway, it will make doing franchises a little bit more confusing. But yeah, we are doing the Godfather trilogy, hot off the heels of the Herbie series, straight into what many consider to be the greatest film and the greatest sequel of all time, and the most disappointing third film, meaning that this is quite a sort of a platonic ideal of a lot of franchises. This is the template with which a lot of franchises followed suit.
Yeah,
you know?
And there's a few interesting kind of things here. I believe this will be and maybe is the only franchise, which all 3 films were nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, what about Lord of the Rings?
No, I don't think they all were they?
Really? No, I don't know. Feels like they should have been.
The
Although
only
if you count The Hobbit, then they definitely weren't.
I don't know. We'll fix these stats and we'll have
the best part of the podcast is at the end of each episode when we slowly work out facts we half remember.
Yeah. That's very interesting. This is a franchise I'm almost scared to cover because I want to consume this in the best way possible. I have them on DVD, but I probably maybe want to find them on Blu-ray to watch them like perfectly and sit down, not have my phone on me, and like fully,
I've seen the first one,
So
but I
have I.
haven't seen the others.
Yeah, same.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. And we'll see you next fortnight. We'll see you next week for something special. And we will see you in a fortnight for the Godfather trilogy. Stay tuned for the post-credits scene. And thank you for listening to our Herbie episode.
Yeah.
Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep, Richie.
Beep beep, AJ.
I was doing an It reference, but you were...
I was doing a bananas and pajamas reference. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? I think I am, BT.
Cool. Hello and welcome to the post-credits scene. This is a scene at the end of each episode brought to you by our $5 plus tiers on Patreon. What?
And it goes post the credits.
It goes post the credits, where if you donate $5 or more on our Patreon, you too can give us something to talk about. And today, our post-credit scene comes to us from Sarah Velling, and she asks, or she says, that's not a question, Professor. Is that the best? That's like the best Simpsons joke. I feel like that's the one that has permeated my, personal, what's it called? Like my dialogue, my vocabulary, the most out of anything. Yeah, my idiolect is that's not a question, Professor. I want to say that all the time whenever someone says something that's not a question. Anyway, what she says is, since I just listened to the Spice World generic movie podcast episode,
one of our best,
I have to ask the decades-old question: which Spice Girl are you? If you're uncertain, there are arguably too many quizzes you can take.
Okay, what I want to do
Baby
here,
Spice through and through, dude.
Let's say,
Never mind.
We'll do a quiz. I'll send you one so we do
Okay.
the same one and we can walk through it together. And then we'll see if we got the same thing. So, which one do you think you are?
I think I'm Baby Spice.
I feel like as I've gotten old, when I was younger, I would have said Baby Spice. Back when I was your age, and Baby Spice was always my favorite. But now I feel like I'm probably more Ginger Spice, who's the divergent of the group in that everyone else is defined by their personalities, but she kind of is able to, so it doesn't quite fit into being scary or a baby or posh or sporty,
Right.
But okay, so here we go.
This is the BuzzFeed.
Which Spice Girl are you? Play along at home. So choose a word: loofah, cowabunga, dingus, blip, poinsettia, or booby.
Well, it's got to be booby.
Yeah, I mean,
What are
I'm
we
going to pick
doing
booby
here?
as well because I find
All right,
a
the next
singular
one.
booby is like, oh my god, it's the funniest thing. Like the word.
I saw a tweet once that was like, "Girl shows one boob, nice. Girl shows two boobs, holy shit." It's like they're not like sexual until there's two of them. You know what I mean? Because I see one boob and it's like, oh, they're getting a mammogram or something. It's not until there's two that it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to read out the next one?
Yep, choose a scent. Dryer sheets, lavender, freshly baked cookies, musk, citrus, or ocean breeze. Oh, it's a toss-up between dryer sheets and ocean breeze. I'm going to go ocean breeze because of my sense of adventure.
I'm going to go musk.
Oh, look at you.
Pick a spice: cumin, paprika, cinnamon, ginger, catnip, or old spice.
I'm going to go cinnamon.
I'm gonna go. Yeah, cinnamon. Yeah, it helps with everything.
All right, choose a city in Europe: Paris, Amsterdam, Berlin, Madrid, Prague, or Rome.
Oh, you're gonna go Amsterdam.
Why?
Because you love weed.
I don't love weed.
I'd like her as a friend.
I don't know much about Madrid or Prague,
Yeah.
so I'm going to go Paris.
I might go Rome.
Oh.
Choose a hairstyle. Ponytail, braid, bun, shaved, bob, or however I woke up. It's going to be however I woke up.
Is this in what I look for in a woman or what I have?
No, it's up to you, man.
Because it's either shaved or however I woke up. There is no in between. Yeah, me too.
Copycat.
All right, choose a Spice Girls song. Oh, this will test my knowledge. Stop, Two Become One, Spice Up Your Life, Wanna Be, If You Can't Dance, or Say You Will Be There.
I don't know if you can't dance. Oh, wait, no. Now that I've said it, I think I do. I'm going to go Two Become One.
I'm going to go Wanna Be.
Who-
Oh, my God.
What?
Richard, I have to retake the quiz.
Who'd you get?
I got Scary Spice.
I got Ginger Spice.
Oh.
So
here's what it says about
Yeah.
me. You are one badass bitch. Not only do you have the best hair on this side of the 90s, but you also sing some of the most important lyrics to ever be sung in the history of music. Zigga zigga. Anyone? Yeah, that was you.
I got Ginger Spice. So maybe the whole group fell apart because you decided to leave. But when it was good, you owned that shit. Girl power? Yeah, that was all you.
Wow. That's ominous.
Don't you think it's cultural appropriation for you to get scary?
Yeah, it is. But yeah, it is. But blame that on the invention of the quiz and not on me.